Today we had some hearings before the Foreign Affairs Committee dealing with Iran. We had Ambassador William Burns there that was representing the administration. One of the most interesting things that I thought came up rather early in the hearing was the fact that those individuals who were the co-sponsors and the sponsors of HCONRES 362 were on the defensive, because they were determined to take the position and answer the question that about whether or not this was an actual blockade or an actual mandate for war. Which tells me that the public is waking up and sending a message here, and they're trying to state out their position and show that this is not going to lead to war. Of course, I took a different position because I think it's a very, very dangerous resolution. And their argument was that this was just a sense of Congress resolution, but all you have to do is read this resolution. You realize how serious it is. And because it is asking the world community as well as United States to stand behind a position that would not allow Iranians to go in and out of their country, that there would be very stringent inspections on all transportation of goods and services in and out of the country. Planes, trains, trucks, cargoes of all sorts. And how would you enforce this without the use of force or without the Navy? They also said that all petroleum products that would be imported would be blocked. There would be a resistance to this. To argue that this is not a blockade is just fallacious. And it is well known that a blockade is an act of war. And I brought these very precise questions up to the ambassador, and really, if you get to see the film, he really didn't have any answers to this. He couldn't define blockade for me. So I put it in the context of how would we as Americans react if another powerful country made this announcement that it would stop all importation of petroleum products, all the ability for Americans to go in and out of their countries without stringent controls and regulations, and all these services. And he really didn't have an answer for that. And I told him, I said, my answer is, I think the American people would be very, very upset about this. And that's about all he said. He says, well, I would agree with you. The American people would be very upset. But he couldn't give me an answer and say, well, this would be terrible. So I made the point. I said, I just read the resolution, part of the resolution, and I said, what part of that doesn't represent a blockade? I said, can you define a blockade? And he really could not define it. The confrontation occurred because of this misunderstanding, because the United Nations had asked the Iranians to voluntarily stop enriching for energy needs. And they didn't do this. They said they had a right, and they were absolutely correct. Matter of fact, there have been 9 investigations unannounced by the United Nations inspectors, and on not one occasion were they sanctioned for violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So there's a lot of misinformation, and it's easy to attack a country like Iran with the language that some of their leaders use, and yet we don't go to war for these reasons. And I even made a statement in the committee that we should be cautious, that if we're careless, to say that we are going to confront and not even take off the table a nuclear first strike, we're in danger of actually precipitating World War III if we're not careful. And that was my plea, is why don't we have a little bit of diplomacy? I mean, Kennedy was willing to talk to Khrushchev at the height of the missile crisis in Cuba and make sure that we didn't have to go to nuclear war. At the same time, we've talked to other nations too, and they've been a lot stronger and a lot more threatening. Iran does not have the nuclear weapons. Our own CIA said they haven't been working on a nuclear weapon since 2003. So my plea is not only with the committee and my fellow members of Congress, but for the American people, is that we should sit back and take a breath and be willing to talk to people and work things out. We don't need to confront them with this threat of a blockade, which is an act of war, which could lead to some very, very serious problems. and quite frankly, I think the American people are with me on this issue right now. Because we went into the war carelessly in Iraq, 68% of the American people right now say that we shouldn't be there. So rather than go and spread ourselves thinly around the world and look for another fight, it's time for us to be more circumspect and be more calm about dealing with this very serious problem.